Yo, 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 what is up, my fallopian tubers? Cesario from the barrio. Coming back at you with another video for your butt. I'm gonna make a quick video. Well, probably not quick. Maybe a little long. I don't know how long it's gonna take me to get through this, but I just wanted to talk about like why I'm a collector. How I became a collector, or whatever. But I think that most collectors have the gene in them of just being a hoarder. And I'm a hoarder. So I collect things, you know. Um, One of my first things I started collecting was business cards. And most of the stuff I'll talk about, I mentioned them before in my videos, but I've been making videos for like 5 or 6 years now. So I can't expect everybody I've seen them all or even remember them if you did see them all. But I've mentioned this before. One of my first things I collected was business cards when me and my brother were younger. And every once in a while, like we would stay at my uncle, my aunt's house, and they used to like clean buildings, clean offices in downtown. So we would go to these skyscrapers and go into the buildings, and clean up desks, vacuum floors, empty trash cans, and stuff like that. And so I started the habit of collecting a business card from every desk that would have one. And man, I remember having a lot back in the days. And I don't know why I did it. I just thought it was cool. And I always had this dream of having my own business card too back then. But I started collecting them. I remember one of the cool things is it seemed like most of these offices that we would go to, like the boss or the owner, they would all have these albums of like big game fishing, marlins and just big old fish. I remember that. I think that was cool as hell. But that seemed like a common theme back then. I remember it seemed like every office I went to, they had an album of the owners or whatever going fishing and catching big giant fish. But anyways, yeah, I collected business cards. I mean, even to this day, I have a habit of I ask everybody for a business card. So my wallet is just torn to pieces because I have all these business cards. And I've had people like tell me like, why in the hell do you still have business cards? You could just put that information on your phone. Like you don't need business cards anymore. But I don't know. Like I said, it's like a gene in me. I can't explain why I do it. I just like to collect. And yeah, so now I guess business cards are phased out, right? You can just keep that information on your phone, or you can look online to find any business or person's phone number almost. But I'm a collector, so that's my fault that they got phased out. But anyways, yeah, so I've been collecting forever. I was collecting Hot Wheels and Star Wars stuff. The Star Wars stuff, like I was poor. We were poor as hell, but I had a pretty sick Star Wars collection, and man, that's a long story. I said it one time in one of my lives. I told a story. Like when I was a kid, I used to have the Millennium Falcon, the X-Wing fighter, and stuff like that. Didn't have a TIE fighter, but I'll explain that right now. Growing up, we had one TV in the house, so whatever my dad watched, we watched it. And like every Saturday, I remember there was a Bruce Lee movie on, so I was a big Bruce Lee fan. And we had this one bully. His name was Mike, and he was like one of the few Caucasians. Few of the white guys lived in a majority, Mexican neighborhood. But this guy Mike, he was big. He was big for his age, and so was I, kind of. I was one of the biggest kids for my age at that time. So I think everybody expected me to like kind of handle the bully and stuff. But yeah, but he was a bully. He used to kick people. He was a bully. But one time we were in the bathroom and I was using the urinal. He walked in and like I think he kicked me or pushed me from behind. So my whole body went into the urinal, which was pretty sick. And like one of my first reactions, I just did like a spinning Bruce Lee kick. Like I spun around, I kicked him right in the stomach, and he fell down. And I guess I knocked the wind out of him. Just got lucky, obviously. It wasn't skill. I just got lucky. And but he was on the ground like trying to catch his breath, and I got scared. Took off running out of the bathroom. I remember running through the blacktop, and the teacher yelled at me like, "Hey, no running in the blacktop!" And I slowed down and walked real fast. Went to the grass, but eventually a teacher came and got me, and he was crying, sent us to the principal's office, and they kind of forced us to become friends. And my dad came up, picked me up from school, and he was pissed, gave me a good ass whooping for that. But I had to become friends with Mike's, and he lived across the street from the school. So went to his house, and man, he had a badass Star Wars collection. Like he had all the toys. Like his parents had money, and his house had bars on it. And but his room, for whatever reason, didn't have the screen on it. You know, like the screen. So I got his Millennium Falcon and chucked it out through the bars. You know, the bars that give Millennium Falcon's flat. Just threw it out. You know, waited like an hour, and then said I had to go home. His mom walked me out. Him and his mom walked me out, and they were like, "Oh wow, you're such a nice boy, and I'm glad you became friends." And this and that. Walked out, went to the yard, picked up the Millennium Falcon, took it home. And at that time, I had a huge toy box, and I always wondered why my parents never picked up on it. Like, never asked me, "Where'd you get this from?" But went back the next day, got his X-wing fighter, closed the wings, bam, chucked it through the bars, you know. And took that, you know, went out, same thing, went out, got it from the yard after, and I took it home. And so the TIE fighter, you couldn't do that because the TIE fighter was solid and it wouldn't fit through the bars. But the next day when I went to his house, his mom was like, "Yeah, Mike can't find his toys, this Millennium Falcon and the X-wing fighter," and she's "Do you know what happened to him?" And I was like, "I have no idea." And she was like, "Well, yeah, you know, her thing is that she walked me out. She didn't see me take him out or whatever, you know." So, but she was suspicious, obviously. So after I left, I remember when I was walking past his window, like on my way home, she was at the window looking at me. And I don't think I ever went back after that. But yeah, that's totally off the subject. I don't even know why I'm saying that. But either way, like, yeah, I was collecting Hot Wheels and Star Wars. I still have a big Star Wars collection to this day, and Hot Wheels. I have a large amount of Hot Wheels. But yeah, and so I mean, I collected that. Just been a hoarder. I just would fall in love with stuff, and I, you know, wanted it all. Wanted every Hot Wheel. Wanted every Star Wars figure. But the next hobby I kind of picked up, that I can remember as collected, was bikes. We had this kid MacGyver that I, you know, kind of grew up with in elementary, but my parents, they would get separated, you know, a lot, and I would move with my mom, come back, and a lot of times we'd get a new apartment. So I went to a lot of different elementary schools, and I knew this guy MacGyver at De Anza. Then I went to a school in Almani, and then ran back into him like when I was in junior high, and he had some badass bikes. I was like, how do you get these bikes, you know? And he shared a secret with me where back then, one of the only locks around were master lock. Like, say you go to the Home Depot and stuff, all they would have, I think back then it was like the Home Club, you know, whatever it was. But he taught me, he's like, yeah, there's only like 10 or 12 different locks. So if you get all 10 or 12 keys, you're gonna open one of the locks. So that's how I would get around the card shows. And after a while, I got, yeah, like I would take the bus, say to the mall, go to the card show, spend all my money. I wouldn't have money to get back on the bus, and I would have my little ring of all the 10 or 12 keys, whatever it was. Find a bike, try all the keys until eventually one opened it. Bam, took the bike. You know. And by this time, my parents were divorced, and we lived in an apartment. And the garage was small. My mom had like a couple of things in there. She couldn't park her car in there. But eventually, I filled it up with bikes. I got into the. I wanted one of every bike. That was like my new, I don't know what to call it, collecting goal or whatever. Man, my battery's about to die. Hopefully the charger works. Normally it overheats when you do this, but we'll see. So yeah, I wanted a BMX bike. I think the only bike that I bought was like a 10-speed or 12-speed Lamont. I think it was called Lamont. But you know, I had to have a mountain bike, a dirt bike, you know, off-road, you know, all bikes, pedal bikes. But I wanted one of every kind, and you know, and eventually I managed. And I had like 20 something bikes. Mom never asked me how I got them either. That's what I always trip out on, but whatever. So yeah, I collected bikes, and then we moved, and we got Section 8, so we moved into these condos. and we had a 2-car garage. And after watching Beetlejuice, I got into another hobby of electric trains. You know, because of Beetlejuice. And man, you know, after a while, I started hustling, and I would have money. And then I got a job when I was like 15. I had a job under the table at this place I used to buy baseball cards from at a liquor store. So I started getting money, hustling for money, and I had a pretty bitchin' setup, you know, that I'm sure was like hundreds and hundreds of dollars invested in it by the time, you know, I was almost kind of finished with it. But so when I went to the service, when I went to the Army, my mom was like, you can't leave it here. You know, it was a big table and had all the stuff. And I told her, you know what? Give it to my uncle. I had an uncle that owned a thrift store, like a store. But basically what he used to do was he would come from Mexico in his big U-Haul van that he bought at an auction. And he would take us looking for stuff on the streets. You know, like refrigerators, whatever. And if it didn't work, he tried to fix it. A lot of times he got lucky and stuff worked. So we would just go around neighborhoods and pick up anything we saw on the streets, and then he would take it back to Mexico. But one time we went to this house and we were taking the stove from the street, and the guy came out. He's like, oh, do you guys work for like the thrift store, the community store, whatever he said it was. I don't remember what it was. And I was just like, yes. My uncle used to take me because I could speak English. That's why. He didn't speak any English. And so that became the new hustle. We would go to houses and tell them, hey, we work for the community, this thrift store, or whatever. And they would give us stuff. So my uncle made a pretty good killing, because he would just come to America with this big old U-Haul truck and basically fill it up with stuff and go to Mexico and sell it. So, I mean, the profit was pretty good, I guess. So I told her, give it to him, to give him the whole train set. And I always wonder, like, how much did he sell it for? I don't think he knew how valuable they were. Probably sold it for cheap. But I kept my bikes. She let me keep my bikes. But I thought I was going to stay in Kentucky for like 4 or 6 months. And then I ended up going longer, so I wouldn't have to come home till Christmas. So she was like, well, what are you going to do with these bikes? When I talked to her, I said, you know what? Give them away except for my mongoose. I just wanted to keep my mongoose dirt bike. So she gave them all away. And my uncle took them all again. So I got rid of my train hobby, and I got rid of my bike collecting hobby. But yeah, I never sold anything. I collected and just keep it. And when it was time to go, I just would give it away. And I actually picked up that bad habit of collecting bikes again, probably like 10 years ago. And you could probably see it on my Instagram at my old house. Man, I had like 20 bikes. I had like 20 bikes in my backyard. And when I moved to this house, when I finally bought a house and I moved, I just took them all to the front and put them on the sidewalk. And people were coming and taking them. They took all the bikes. So again, didn't sell any of them, just got rid of them. So like I said, I'm just like naturally a hoarder. I like to collect things. And like baseball cards, I've been collecting them forever. So yeah, that's kind of my story. I just collect because I'm a hoarder, you know, and my wife is a hoarder too. So if I have a room, I have a big shelf full of bobbleheads, like probably over 100 bobbleheads, and I just gave that up. Another hobby I had at my old house is I had a big backyard at the house that we were renting for dirt cheap, and I had a pretty big lot, and I built a BMX track. So I built a BMX track so I could ride my bike. But there was one time when I was by myself in the backyard all drunk, and I built this big ramp, right? Man, and I just wanted to do the biggest jump and try to do a tabletop, and man, I landed wrong. My stomach hit the handlebars, and I knocked the wind out of myself. And man, I mean, I was on the floor. Thought I broke my ribs. I mean, I was in pain and kind of tangled up in the bike. But I was by myself. No one's gonna be home for hours, so I think I was on the floor for like a half hour before I could finally get up, which is actually kind of scary for a little bit. And then I realized, okay, it's just gonna take some time and I'll recover. But after that, I kind of, okay, like I can't be doing this, like jumping, you know, my bike and my bike, like, because I had to go to work. You know, I do a physical job. Like, yeah, I can't be breaking bones and stuff. So I picked up, I made it into an RC track. And that was my next hobby. You know, I had RC cars. Again, like, you could go back to my Instagram and you'll see all my RC cars. And man, built a track in my backyard, and I got all my friends into it. So a lot of my friends started buying RC cars, and man, we would have badass little tournaments and races in my backyard. But it got to a point that once I started collecting my sets, like, you could say when I first started collecting baseball cards, I was kind of a set collector because that's all you could really do, you know. And I would just buy packs. So with those packs, I'd try to put the sets together. But somebody had a contest when I first got on YouTube to show your card room, right? And basically, like, when I watch everybody else's videos, everybody's card rooms were like organized, and they kind of had their stuff organized, you know, like they had structure to it, and mine didn't have any structure. Back then all my cards were in chronological order, so I would have a box and just fill it up as I picked up cards. So it didn't matter what cards I got, they just went in the box in an order. And so that's how I had it in my head. It was like organized chaos, if you understand that. So like if I had a card that say rest in peace Ricky Russo gave me, or Joe Ryan Fan 30 gave me, I remember like when I got it or before, who gave me a package, a care package back then. Because back in the days, YouTube was nothing but care packages. Like, people didn't really sell each other cards. It was all like blind trades, or just, here, you can have this for free. This belongs in your set. It was nothing like it is today. It was so much different. And so I would get a lot of care packages. And, you know, as I got them, I would just put in, that's how I remember, like when I got them, oh, I got it before this guy, and that's how. But when I entered this contest and they wanted chronological, you know, they wanted more organization, I started doing that. I started separating all my players, you know, and I started my PCs of players, separating cards. And, you know, and then somebody else made a video, like, show me, like, your sets and stuff. And so I started putting my sets in binders. So believe it or not, like, my whole binder thing started probably like 5 years ago. I started taking all my sets out of the boxes and putting them in binders, and then say like, oh man, you know, I want to finish my childhood set building that I had. And so my first goal was just to complete all the 80s, all the Topps 80s, finish them up. So I did that, and then I said, oh man, I'm gonna do all my Donruss. I want all the 80s Donruss, and then all the 80s Fleer. Did that. Then after I completed that, set a new goal. All right, I'm gonna do them from all the 80s to present. Then did most of that. Then I was like, you know, I'm gonna do it from 74 till now. Now I did pretty much that. So now I'm like, I want to get all the sets from the 70s till now, just the Topps. You know, well, that's all there was back then, anyways. In the 70s and stuff was Topps. So that's where I'm at now. And yeah, so it's like I'm a hoarder. Like I said, and I don't throw anything away. So every time my room gets too full and I do a cleanup every year, I buy a giant tote. So I have like 3 or 4 totes of cards or stuff that I would remove off my shelves. Because that's what happened to my RC cards, if I got off the subject. I had like 20 RC cars, and every RC car had a different toolbox for it with different parts. Not 20, I had like 10. But once I started putting my cards in binders, I needed room for the binders. So I just said, you know what? Fuck RC cars. Sorry for cursing. I just said, screw the RC cars. I need baseball. My baseball hobby is more important. So I got rid of all of them except for 2. I kept 1 electric and 1 gas one. So, and they just been sitting in my garage, to tell you the truth. But I had to quit one hobby to support another hobby. But yeah, I did sell those. I ended up selling those because I needed to buy a shelf. If you go back to my videos from my old house, my shelf was made out of bricks and some wood from a kitchen that they were throwing away. So yeah, in my house, I literally had, my shelves were made out of cylinder bricks. They were made out of cylinder bricks. But when I went to the new house, my wife was like, no, you're not setting that up in this house. So I had to sell all my RC cars to buy a shelf from IKEA, which is very good, the one that you see in my background, the white one. And the shelf that had all the RC cards is my other shelf where I have all the other ones on the side, all the other binders. So yeah, it's like I collect because I'm a hoarder, basically. You know, I have no interest in making money off this stuff. But yeah, so that's why I collect. And yeah, like I said, I mean, there's so many new labels now. I hear like a lot of people tell, oh, you're a true collector. Like, I'm just a collector. If you want to label me that, that's fine. But I don't really call myself that. But hey, I'll take it. So that's the story of my collecting, man. Like I said, man, I just been collecting my whole life, from the business cards to trains to bikes to RC cars, you know, and baseball cards, basically, bobbleheads, Hot Wheels, Star Wars. I have a bag in my garage full of Star Wars figures. You know, I have like 3 totes full of Hot Wheels. And I just keep them. No plans on selling them, you know. But the thing is it's not a badge of honor. It's not something that like, oh, I'm better than you. I'm not. That's just the way I collect. I love, and I think a lot of people get that wrong. Like if I say, oh, I don't sell cards, like I look down on you if you sell cards. I don't. Do you? I'm just telling you how I collect. I'm not better than you. No way. You know. But yeah, you know, that's it. So yeah, I'm a collector, man. And I collect things. So yeah, one day I probably should show all the totes that I have, you know, full of memorabilia, like, because every year I clear out my shelves to make room for other new stuff that I have, and I just store them. But yeah, man, I'm a collector, and I'm sorry I'm ruining the hobby. Just kidding, man. So I don't know. Tell me your guys' thoughts, man. I'm just a collector, man. You know, I'm just telling you why I call myself a collector. I've been doing it my whole. I'm just a hoarder, basically. You know, that's the gene in me, and I hear a lot of other people say that too. It's like, well, collectors are naturally hoarders, and I am. So that's why I collect stuff, and that's my story. Love the hobby. Just keep collecting baseball cards forever, I say. Ciao. And I'm in my car. Yeah, this lady's crazy lady next to me talking to me outside my car, but I don't like it. Like I always say, when you make a video, you gotta show cards. So let me see if I have any cards in my glove compartment thingy. Oh, I have this thing right here. Oh, I have Mike, and I have Steve Jelt's autograph. All right, guys, love the hobby. Keep collecting baseball cards forever. This crazy lady's outside my car asking me for stuff. So there you go. Ciao. Oh yeah, and like also, like YouTube is a hobby for me also. You know what I mean? It's just a hobby. And one of the reasons, like, just to kind of like bring it on with the stuff going on right now, like, one of the reasons I don't really dig the sponsorships is like I have the freedom to make a video when I want to make a video. Sometimes if I'm not in the mood, I'll go weeks without making videos, and you know, and I love that freedom. But once you get sponsorships, sometimes I feel like you're almost forced to make videos. Like you have to make content, and I think sometimes you don't. It's almost impossible to like just have fresh content every single day, and sometimes you just have to make a video of something, you know, and I just don't want to do that. All right, so lady's knocking on my window now. All right. But yeah, man, I don't know, man, this whole thing going around is pretty insane. But yeah, so I'm just wanting to let you guys know why I'm a collector and some of the reasons of why I feel the way I do. Blah, blah, blah. I'm just blabbing. Oh yeah, and one last thing. Man, like when I used to collect business cards, it was a dream of mine. I had my own business card, and then I was glad when I Like when I finally did get my own business card, it was like a dream come true, man. Really was. It was like one of the proudest moments of my life. You know, simple dreams that came true. But anyways, love the hobby. Keep collecting baseball cards forever, as said. Ciao. And another thing, so like we all differ. There's so many different aspects of the hobby. We have flippers, investors, and why I may not be big fan of flipping and investing. You know, I'm not a big fan of it. I don't necessarily have a problem with people themselves who do it. Growing up as a kid, you always heard, like, one of the models I grew up hearing and kind of believing is, don't hate the player, hate the game, you know? So I'm friends with a lot of flippers. I'm friends with investors. I don't hate the person themselves. I just don't like the game that they're playing. But hey, you know, so keep it classy, people. You can still be friends, all right?